The morning was as usual. The sound of birds outside and the gentle breeze enveloped the village. Inside a modest country house, an old man slowly awoke. He brewed coffee and opened the door to get the newspaper. But what greeted him was not a peaceful morning. Dozens of reporters and flashing cameras had disrupted his morning. One reporter urgently shouted,
"Professor, the methane bubble has burst, just as you predicted."
As soon as the words were spoken, the old man's vision blurred. The word methane bubble echoed in his mind, bringing back memories from the past. What he had warned about decades ago had finally become reality. The helplessness and anger he had felt at that time overwhelmed him once again. In 1994, as a young scientist, he discovered the increasing risk of methane trapped in the permafrost, being released as Siberia's permafrost thawed. If methane were to be released into the atmosphere, climate change would accelerate uncontrollably. This was a signal of past mass extinctions, and it meant that we might be facing another mass extinction. Based on his research, he submitted an urgent report to the government. The materials he carried into the meeting room were filled with warnings about the methane bubble.
Methane is a powerful greenhouse gas, and if the methane trapped in the permafrost is released into the atmosphere, climate change will become uncontrollable, and the Earth will cross an irreversible tipping point. Large-scale greenhouse gas releases have occurred in the past, and they led to mass extinction events. If we fail to prevent warming and methane is released from the permafrost, the Earth will likely face another mass extinction.
However, those in the meeting room did not take his warning seriously.
A mass extinction. That's ridiculous. This sounds absurd. That kind of thing doesn't happen easily. Unnecessary alarm will only cause social chaos and increase societal costs. We can't afford to pay astronomical social costs based on the words of a neurotic scientist.
The scientist could only remain silent in despair. The truth they ignored weighed too heavily on him. The old man was momentarily speechless in front of the reporters. The methane bubble he had warned about had burst, and now no one could deny it. But it was too late. The warnings he had been disregarded for were now on the verge of turning into a catastrophe. He sighed deeply and finally stepped up to the microphone.
We have already crossed the tipping point. There is no longer a way to stop it. Regrettably, we have missed the opportunity for change. At this point, the best we can do is delay the catastrophe and minimize the damage.
We know of many mass extinction events in Earth's history. One such event was the Permian-Triassic extinction, which occurred about 250 million years ago. At that time, Earth experienced a sudden rise in methane and carbon dioxide levels due to natural factors such as massive volcanic eruptions, leading to the extinction of more than 90% of species. The climate change back then was caused by natural forces, and life forms could not control it. Today's global warming follows a similar environmental pattern to past mass extinctions, but there's a significant difference. Today's warming is an artificial phenomenon triggered by human activities. Fossil fuel use, excessive industrialization, and overconsumption are making the atmosphere thicker with greenhouse gases, and as a result, the Earth is continuously heating up. This is the essence of modern climate change. Scientists have been warning of these dangers for decades, but those warnings were repeatedly ignored, and now we are facing the consequences. The bursting of the methane bubble, extreme weather anomalies, and rapidly melting glaciers are all manifestations of those warnings coming true. However, we still have the opportunity to reverse this situation. Since global warming was triggered by human actions, the solution is also in our hands. Carbon footprint. This is one of the key concepts in the fight against climate change. A carbon footprint is a measure of the amount of greenhouse gases we emit in our daily lives. Everything we use, the food we consume, and the transportation we take all impact our carbon footprint. And reducing that footprint is the most important way to combat climate change. One of the most visible examples is food consumption. Meat, especially beef, has a very high carbon footprint. The carbon dioxide emitted to produce the same amount of beef is 3 times that of pork and 4 times that of chicken. This is due to the methane emitted during cattle farming and the enormous resource consumption involved. To reduce our carbon footprint, it is more eco-friendly to consume pork or chicken instead of beef. But the most important thing is developing the habit of consuming only what is necessary. We often buy more than we need, wasting resources and energy. This overconsumption leads to more production, and as a result, carbon emissions increase even further. Therefore, it's important to think carefully about whether we really need an item before purchasing it, and to choose products that can last as long as possible. Recycling and reusing are also effective ways to conserve resources. All these practices may seem small, but when combined, our choices can make a tremendous difference in protecting the planet. Unlike past mass extinctions, today's global warming can be influenced by human choices. We now stand at a crossroads where our choices will shape the future. If we reduce our carbon footprint and choose a more sustainable way of life, Earth will give us another chance. In the end, everything depends on how we act. Every action we take can help prevent climate change and safeguard the future of both humanity and the planet. Now is the time for us to start. The professor, as usual, drank his coffee and opened the newspaper. Innovations in CCS and CCU technologies, accelerating solutions to greenhouse gas problems. Government actively investing in climate change response. The professor looked down at the newspaper for a moment. The news was about advancements in carbon capture and storage technologies and the government's proactive response to climate change. A quiet smile spread across the professor's face. Though the warnings had become reality, there was now hope for change. After nodding to a young person planting a tree, he turned back to the newspaper and took a warm sip of his coffee.